More than a year after Russian President Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of neighboring Ukraine in the battle zone, things now could be heading for a change after the alleged assassination attempt on the life of the Russian president. So are we on the brink of a new chapter in the Russian-Ukraine war? Our next report tells you more.
Moscow claims that Ukraine launched an audacious attack on the Russian President Vladimir Putin. This video has been doing the rounds on Russian social media, which shows a drone being shot down right above Kremlin. Remember, Kremlin is the fortress that houses the official residence of the Russian president. Moscow has now threatened to retaliate when and where it considers necessary. But now the question arises, who is behind the alleged assassination attempt of the Russian president? Is it Ukraine, the US, or was it Russia itself? Well, Moscow says the US masterminded the drone attack on Kremlin. It says decisions on such attacks are not made in Kyiv, but in Washington. And Kyiv only does what it is told to do. But the claim made by Moscow has been rebuffed by Washington. The US says Russia is lying about their role in the attack, while Ukraine says it has nothing to do with the drone attack.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities. We don't have, enough weapon for this. That's why we don't use it anywhere.
Since the drone attack on the Kremlin, Moscow has launched an attack on Ukraine's southern Kherson region. According to Kyiv, at least 21 people have been killed and about 15 wounded. While on the other hand, Ukraine has launched multiple drone attacks striking deep within the Russian territory. Moreover, in the past, some Russian nationals have been attacked as well. But what remains a mystery is who was behind these attacks. On the 2nd of April, a Russian military blogger, Vladlen Tatarsky, died in an explosion at a St. Petersburg cafe where at least 16 people were injured. Then on the 20th of August, Russia's President Vladimir Putin's ally, Alexander Dugin's daughter Daria Dugina, was killed in a car bomb attack near Moscow. In October, an explosion caused the partial collapse of a bridge linking the Crimean Peninsula with Russia, damaging a key supply artery for the Kremlin's faltering war effort in southern Ukraine. Russia says it was Ukraine, but Kyiv rubbishes the claim of the responsibility. And in a theater of conflict, it's very difficult to establish the facts, as everything remains hidden in the fog of war. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, for more on this, we are being joined by Edward P. Joseph from Washington, D.C. He's a foreign policy analyst and a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University. Welcome to the broadcast, Edward. We're trying to find out who would have incentive to carry out such a brazen attack. And then the question remains whether or not this was a security breach and how these drones even got that far all the way to the Kremlin. What are your thoughts on who may be responsible?
Well, first of all, as your report just indicated, the facts are very thin. We simply know very little about this. And the one thing we do know in terms of official U.S. A reaction to this is not only did the U.S. absolutely and flatly deny it was behind this, which is completely credible. Why would the U.S. support such a brazen action when President Biden has made it clear he doesn't want any type of direct confrontation between the United States and Russia? And that's been U.S. policy all along. And it's been reflected in the U.S. posture in terms of the weapons it provides for Ukraine to defend itself against this unprovoked invasion. So that allegation by Russia really has no credibility behind it. But what is interesting is that the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said that if Ukraine took such measures, that they're decisions for Ukraine to make. This was interesting. This was stated yesterday by Secretary of State Blinken. In other words, that it's that the U.S. is not imposing some type of barrier on the actions that Ukraine would take. Again, though, we have a flat denial by President Zelensky, as you quoted in your report, and that is unusual because typically Ukraine, when there are these cases that have been cited, Ukraine simply says nothing. It says basically we neither confirm nor deny. But in this case, you have a flat denial by President Zelensky of any Ukrainian involvement in this. And so your question remains open. It's difficult to assess who was behind this and what was behind this. Secretary Blinken expressed deep skepticism about any Russian claims on this. So it still remains quite murky. Please.
Vladimir Putin and the Russians seem convinced, however. Around 21 Ukrainians died just early in the hours of this morning and last night when Russia unleashed a barrage of bombs, possibly in retaliation to this so-called assassination attempt against Vladimir Putin, and then a wave of kamikaze drones in Kyiv and Odessa. Regardless, are we seeing a new chapter in the Ukraine-Russia war at this point?
We may be. There's great anticipation, of course, that Ukraine would conduct a military offensive this spring coming up now. There's been great anticipation and talk about a Ukrainian offensive, and this could be the Russian attempt to preempt that offensive. Again, here, what's very important for your listeners and your viewers to understand is that these are not parallel actions. The Ukrainian offensive goes against military targets in Ukraine on its territory, while Russia has invaded sovereign Ukrainian territory and attacks civilian targets. We should understand these are not accidental casualties. These are deliberate attacks on civilian targets by Russia, as it has done from the outset of the war. And we saw President Zelensky visit the Netherlands and call there for where the International Criminal Court is headquartered and to call for accountability for President Putin for war crimes in this unprovoked invasion. Please.